What is going on, everyone? Welcome into BP Insights. So I kind of had this take before that you don't really see 9s and 10s out in public. I went viral on TikTok for it. It's interesting though when you think about it. You don't really see a whole lot of 9s and 10s out in public. It's kind of interesting when you think about this. And you take a step back and you think, why is this? Why don't you see a lot of 9s and 10s out in public? Well, the main reason is simply a lot of women that are 9s and 10s are living a different lifestyle. They just don't. They're hanging out with millionaires, celebrities. They don't go. They choose to just do things like DoorDash, Instacart, stuff like that. They just don't want to go out and face, getting hollered at by so many men. Because you think about it, think about how many girls there's 7s or 8s that are constantly getting hit on by guys in their day-to-day life. So think about if 7s and 8s are getting ambushed by dudes, and think about how 9s and 10s are, and just the amount of looks. Like think about if you're I remember this girl came in to my work the other day. She was like an 8, and she was like in a hurry, she did not want to make eye contact with me. She got out of the store quickly. I've noticed that even girls that are like 8s, borderline 9s. I think some guys would consider them 9s, but some guys have more forgiving scales. Those women, like the 8s, maybe 9-ish, 8s debatable, 9s, they're always when they do come into stores or if they're out and about in public in the mornings, they always seem to be in a hurry. I notice they're always like in a big rush. It's like they have to, they're desperate to get out of there. And they don't. I've noticed the more attractive the woman is, the less indicators of interest she'll give you. Like I've noticed that if a girl's like 6 or 7, sometimes they'll look at you a little bit, but then they'll kind of just look away. I've noticed, obviously, if they look at you, look away, it's usually, if they look at you, look away, it's usually no interest. If they look at you, look down, that's a sign of submission. Usually that's a good sign. They're indirectly submitting to you. So, but yeah, that's the thing. 9s and 10s, they just do not, if they're not interested in you, they do not want to give you any indicators of interest. I think it's just based on solely they get hit on so often in public. They just do not want to give any guy any sort of inkling to approach them because they're constantly getting hit on. They don't want another guy to come up to them again. But yeah, I talked about. So I remember I was at work one time and this one girl. She was probably a 9 out of 10. I had her at the register, and she was just not looking. She did not look at me at all, acknowledge me. She said hello, but she did not want to give me any indicators of interest. So I think it was safe to assume in that case that she was dealing with a man of a higher status. I think that's what you can assume oftentimes if a woman does not give you any sort of indicator of interest. She's usually dealing with a man who's usually of higher status. Obviously, that's not the case. Sometimes it can just be she's not your type. But more often than not, a lot of the time is if they don't. That's really, I guess that's kind of the basis for if a woman does not give you any indicators of interest. It's either she's dealing with a higher caliber guy or you're just not her specific type. So ideally, you want to fall into those two. One of those two categories. You're a woman specific type, or you are a guy who is just of such high status that she would be inclined to meet up with you. But yeah, let's dive deep into this more. So I'll be honest, there'll be times I'll work an 8-hour shift. I work in a retail store and I'm looking around and I'm just like, stupid things like this to pass the time. Sometimes I'll just count to see how many girls that are 8s come in. And some days, I'll be honest, there's only like 2 or 3 even 8s. So when you think about, that's why guys' scales, you really have to question a lot of men's scales, because if you're out in public all day, say you go to school, to work, to the gym, and like your buddy, and you're saying, "Oh, I see all these 9s and 10s out," you immediately scratch your head and say, "What kind of scale does that guy have?" Because, honestly, if I work an 8-hour shift in a store where primarily it's all women coming in, and I see 2, 3 8s, one guy saying he's seen all these 9s and 10s. It's just, it's just a load. It's a load of bull crap. So that's the thing. You just don't. Back to the topic. You just don't see a lot of 9s and 10s. Like, to me, like think about it this way. If you're at a Target, and Andrew Tate talks about that. If you're in a Target, or if you're in a shopping mall in Nebraska, okay, and it's a busy day, Saturday, if Summer Rae walked in, people would be like, people's heads would be like snap. Dudes would be like, you'd see like some wow looks, like just complete shock. You just don't, you're just not gonna see that. You're just not. It's just not gonna happen. I know, and some of the guys on TikTok commented on that video that I must not be from Arizona. It sounds like Arizona, Southern California. I think where guys get it a little confused is, I think what you see is, I guess I can't speak because I've never been to Arizona. I mean, I've been to California a couple times, been to Florida. Obviously, those are states. I think what guys mistake in those states is, I think that in those states there's more 8s. I think you see more 8s, and when you see more 8s, I think you start immediately just assuming, some of them you bump up to 9, some of them, if you're a guy that's a really forgiving scale, you'll bump them up to 10. So I think that's what guys are getting a little bit twisted, is that they're seeing so many 8s that some of them they'll give a bump to 9. I think that's what guys think. One guy put college gyms too. College gyms, same kind of thing. I think you see a lot of 7s, even 8s, but it's just really not a lot of 9s and 10s. But I've noticed though, if you do see an 8 or 9, I've noticed a lot of times those girls have headphones in. They just do not, sometimes they just do not want to be bothered. I think, a lot of those girls just get approached very frequently. And I've noticed that like a lot of girls, they're like 8s. That are on college campuses, those are the girls that tend to be in relationships, if they're at least somewhat feminine, because they just they tend to be they tend to be somewhat feminine, because obviously if they weren't feminine and didn't respect men, they probably would just they wouldn't be in a relationship. So then those women tend to be swept up quickly, because men just see feminine women 8 out of 10. Usually a tall, pretty attractive guy usually has her in a relationship. So that's kind of one thing I've noticed. But yeah, I've noticed like the very attractive women that are masculine, I noticed that they tend to those are the women that tend to, like, I kind of have interacted with a couple. I've noticed that those type of women, they really don't, if they're not, like, if you can tell, like, if your looks are not up to par when you're speaking to one of them, because they will not give you any sort of indicator of interest. The deep voices, sometimes they're a sorority girl. Those are, a lot of times, sorority girls are kind of masculine, and it goes back to the debate: are women becoming more masculine because men are becoming more beta, or are men becoming more beta because women are becoming more masculine? So, but that's kind of a different topic in its own sense. But yeah, I thought it was interesting. I went viral on that TikTok. A lot of women were saying, how dare this guy, who's like a 5 or 6 out of 10, have the audacity to say something like this. But it is something you think about. I think a lot of people, that's why I got so many views, so many likes, so many comments, engagement, because people know it's true. If you're in Maine, I'm in Michigan, if you're in Maine, or if you're in Oklahoma, if you're in a state that's, not the warmest, you're probably just not running into a lot of 9s and 10s. A lot of 9s and 10s. Miami, you got to be, but people, that's the thing, people name some places, but it's a handful of cities. Maybe Miami, maybe, Toronto, Los Angeles, Phoenix. That's the thing. Maybe certain warm cities, but you got to think not everyone lives in those cities. Most people, well, I guess Los Angeles, but I don't know. I guess those cities are heavily populated, but you got to think not everyone, even if people live in those cities, a lot of times they live on kind of the outskirts of the city, not directly in the, they live on the outskirts of the city where it's, more so it's not as, younger. If you live in like a suburb, it's not as, the city is often kind of the younger area. So yeah, just wanted to touch on that. Thanks so much for tuning in to BP Insights. Stay tuned for more episodes and clips from the show. Till next time, peace.